G'day, mate. I've been keeping chooks in the backyard here in Australia for a few years now, and I reckon it's time we had a proper yarn about whether these feathery little mongrels actually save you any money or just eat through your pay like a slab at a Barbie. Look, I got into backyard eggs for all the usual reasons. I wanted to know my brekkie wasn't coming from some sad battery farm. I figured the kids should learn where food comes from instead of thinking it grows at Woolies. And yeah, I was sick of getting slugged. $12 a dozen every time the supermarkets had another egg shortage. But crikey, the moment you start adding up the dollars, the dream cop's a bit of a hiding. First hit is the setup, and it is not small bickies. A decent fox-proof coop that can handle a Western Sydney scorcher and a Melbourne hailstorm will set you back a fair bit. I grabbed one from the big green shed, thinking I would get away cheap. But once I added proper mesh roofing, insulation, and an auto door, so I am not up at sparrows every morning, I was well over $1,000. Then you need the hens point of lay pullets around Australia are going for $25 to $40 each. These days, I run ISA Browns and Australorps because they lay like champions and handle the heat, but they still cost you before they drop a single egg in the nesting box. Add feeders, waterers, straw shell, grit, and all the little bits, and I was $500 down before I heard the first cackle. Now, the ongoing costs are where it really gets you. Layer pellets have gone through the roof lately. A 20-kilo bag is close to $30, and my 6 girls knocked that over in 3 to 4 weeks, unless they are out fossicking in the yard all day. Scraps are great, but they do not replace proper feed, and you still need shell grit or their eggs go soft. Then there is worming powder, mite dust, and the odd trip to the avian vet when one of them goes off her food and sits in the corner looking crook. Even water adds up when it is 40 degrees and they're drinking like they have just run a marathon. So what do I get back from all that eggs? Obviously, a young hen in good nick will give you 5 or 6 a week through spring and summer. Then she slows down in winter, unless you muck around with lights, which feels a bit rough and chews more power anyway. With my 4 best layers, I average about 20 eggs a week, which sounds bonza until you do the maths. That is roughly 86 dozen a year. Down at the farmer's market, free range, eggs go for $8 to $12 a dozen, depending on if you're in Byron or Ballarat. But let us be honest, I am not flogging cartons every weekend. I give heaps to the neighbors. I use stacks and cakes, fritters, and brekkie wraps, and I still end up buying eggs when the whole flock decides to molt or go broody at the same time. So actual cash in my pocket from selling eggs is bugger all. And mate, do not forget your time, because no one ever puts that in their backyard budget. I am out there every morning, opening the coop, topping up water, checking feed, and every arvo locking them up so the foxes do not have a free feed, cleaning poo, chasing escapees, and collecting eggs chews up 3 or 4 hours a week. Easy. If I paid myself $10 an hour, I'm spending over $1,500 a year in labor. Suddenly my dozen eggs costs more than the organic ones at the deli. But here is where I reckon the real value sits, and it never shows up on a spreadsheet. My veggie patch has gone off like a frog in a sock since I started digging in aged chook poo. Food waste is bugger all now because scraps go straight to the girls instead of the bin. The kids have learned that food takes work, and that is worth more than any saving. And there's nothing better than sitting on the back step with a cuppa, watching the chooks scratch around while the magpies warble in the gum trees. You cannot put a price on that kind of arvo. If you're dead set on making the numbers stack up better, here's what I've learned. Buy a secondhand coop off gum tree and beef it up yourself, because new ones cost an arm and a leg, and foxes in Australia are bloody clever. Pick breeds that are known for laying and staying healthy, not just the pretty ones that look good on Instagram. Let them free range when you are home to cut the feed bill, but lock them up before dusk without fail. Bottle or freeze your summer glut of eggs so you are not buying cartons in winter when the girls take a break. Actually count your eggs for a few months because we all reckon they lay more than they do, and keep the flock small. 6 hens feed a family of 4. No worries, and any more just means more feed, more mess, and more noise for the neighbors. At the end of the day, running backyard chooks for eggs in Australia hardly ever turns a real profit if you count every cent and every minute, but it can break even or feel like a win if you value the lifestyle, the food quality, and the bit of self-reliance it gives you. I keep chooks because I love wandering out in my thongs and finding warm eggs in the nesting box, while the kookaburras laugh. If I just wanted cheap eggs, I would duck down to Aldi and be done with it. But if you want a hobby that feeds you, teaches you, and gets you outside, then the cost suddenly makes sense. If you want to know your own numbers, just grab an old exercise book and jot down everything you spend on the chooks for 3 months. Then tally the eggs you collect. No apps, no tables, just you and a pen. You will work out quick smart if your flock is a money saver, a money pit, or somewhere in between. And whatever the answer is, it will be honest. And that is what backyard chooks in Australia are all about. If you are already running a flock, I would love to hear what gave you the biggest shock. For me, it was realizing how much I bake now just to use up the eggs. Was it the feed bill, the coop upgrade, or the fact you have names for all your girls and talk to them like mates? Chuck your story below and let us have a laugh, because no 2 backyards are the same, and that is what makes this chook life such a ripper.